Hi everyone, in this tutorial we will solve 3 questions. In the first question we will create a variable called myNumber, assign it 23 and write a piece of code that checks if my number is even or odd. In the second question we will create a variable called 3-digit number and assign it 857. Then write a piece of code that prints every digit of the variable 3-digit number. In the last question, we will create 3 variables x, y, and z, assign them respectively 8, 2, and 9. Then write a piece of code to print them in ascending order. That's from minimum to maximum. First question. An integer is called even if it is divisible by 2. Otherwise, it's called an odd number. To test if an integer is divisible by 2, use the modulo operator. Remember that modulo operator returns the remainder of a division. So if a number modulo 2 gives 0, then this number is even. Now let's create a variable myNumber and assign 23 to this variable. Our code will include if-else statement. If myNumber is divisible by 2, then print 23 is an even number. Otherwise, print 23 is an odd number. If myNumber modulo 2 is equal to 0, print 23 is an even number. If the true branch is not true, so we go to the else, print 23 is an odd number. And actually, when I run the code, 23 is an odd number. Question 2. You can easily print the digits using strings, but we didn't learn yet strings and we want to practice with integer objects. So we will solve in a hardest way. I told in the lecture that integer division and modulo operator are very powerful. Now we will use it. Let's go on PyCharm. And before writing any code, let me explain on integer 857. 857 integer division by 100 gives me the first digit 8. 857 modulo 100 gives 57, last 2 digits. 57 integer division by 10 gives 5, the second digit, and 57 modulo 10 gives 7, the third digit. Now let's move on code. Create a variable called 3-digit number and assign 857 to it. Compute 3-digit number integer division by 100 and assign it to a variable called first digit. Compute 3-digit number modulo 100 and assign it to a variable called 2-digit number. Compute 2-digit number integer division by 10 and assign it to a variable called second digit. And lastly, compute 2-digit number modulo 10 and assign it to a variable called third digit. Finally, with the print statement, get the result. First digit is 8, second digit is 5, third digit is 7. Last question. Before starting to write codes, I will use a diagram to understand what comparisons I need to perform. I know that in the worst case, I have to make 3 comparisons. Note that you can start with any comparison you want. I arbitrarily chosen the first comparison. X is strictly greater than Y. If it is true, I will compare X with Z. X is strictly greater than Z. This is my second comparison. If it is false, I know that X is greater than Y, and I know also that Z is greater than X. So I have the response. The order is Y, X, Z. If it is true, then I know that X is the greatest number, but I don't know if Y is greater than Z or not. The last comparisons of the true branch is Y is strictly greater than Z. If it is true, the smallest number is Z. If it is false, the smallest number is Y. On the other hand, if my first comparison, X is strictly greater than Y, is false, I have to make a comparison between Y and Z. Y is strictly less than Z. If it is true, I know that Y is greater than X and Z is strictly greater than Y. And if it is true, I have the order. X is less than Y and Y is less than Z. If it is false, I have to make the last comparisons because I know that Y is the greatest number. The last comparison I have to make is between X and Z. X is strictly greater than Z. If it is true, Z is the smallest number. If it is false, X is the smallest number. Now I will go on Python console and I will create 3 variables, X, Y and Z. I will assign 8 to X. I will assign 2 to Y. And I will assign 9 to Z. And here is my code. At the very beginning, I have the first comparisons that you seen on my chart. This is the second comparison, this is the third comparisons, and these are the true branch of the first comparison. If the third comparison is true, the first is true, the second is true, and the third is true, I have the result. If the third is not true, I have another result. If the second is not true, I have the result. If the first comparison is not true at all, I go to the false branch of the first comparison. And if I run the code, I have the ordered form of 3 variables, 2, 8, 9. I want to show you a shortcut of else-if statement called elif. On the false branch of our code, we had a lot of else and then if statement. To get rid of this, there's a statement elif. Be careful using elif. There are 2 conditions. It's on the false branch and it's followed by another comparison or Boolean logic operation. On my initial code, I will add 2 elif on the false branch of my first comparison is here, and false branch of my comparison is there. So I will add one elif here, another elif here, and then finish my code with the else statement. And this is the last version of my code. So this part of my code is new. First homework. In the first question, you will make mentally some comparison computations combined with Boolean logic operations. In the second question, you will print out second and the fourth digit of a 4-digit number. And in the last question, you will find the maximum of 3 variables, x, y, and z. And at the end, you will check your code by changing the values of the 3 variables.